Alright, you guys, this is a long haul. So we've got a 45-45 game that I've just picked up in open challenges. I've started with e4. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this game and try and go through the logic of every single move at each point. Okay, so apparently this is called the Owen Defence, but we're going to ignore any kind of ideas of theory, right? We're going to stick completely to principles. Okay, so why did my opponent play that move? Well, it's one of the pawns that you need to move in order to release bishops, okay? 4 of the pawns will release a bishop, and 4 of them will not help. They're useless, right? Now this is one, so it's almost certain that he wants to put his bishop on there. Okay, I played e4 so that I could get my pieces out into the board quite quickly as well. So I would imagine that he's going to put his bishop on here at some point. Therefore, what I want to do is, first of all, control the center, okay, and also release my pieces. Now this bishop's still trapped in, so it's a great time to play d4, now that my opponent has given me the opportunity by playing in this ultra-modern style. And now e6, okay. So this is very quiet, conservative, restrained on the part of Panchal_17. Wonder how his mum calls him in for his tea. Panchal_17, come in for your tea. Stop playing chess. Okay. So now, what do we do? Now both the bishops are free to come out into the board, and so are the knights. And generally the rule is knights before bishops, so I'm going to develop a knight. And I have to be aware that that pawn is undefended. This pawn is defended twice. Okay? So this pawn is waiting for maybe the knight to come out to here, or maybe the bishop to come out to here, right? Now, I don't have to defend that piece, that pawn. But it's generally, there's a lot of generalies in chess, it's generally a good idea that your pieces are all defended by each other, coordinated. Okay, so now I'm thinking about castling, which is good for 2 reasons. One, it gets your king safer. The king is safer in the corner, right? If you're in a corner, if you imagine you've got a knife and you've got 3 attackers, right? If you get yourself in the corner, you cut off 3/4 of the directions that they can attack you. And the same goes with the king, right? You put the king in the corner, he can only be attacked from so much of the board. The other reason is it activates rookie-rook. Yeah, whichever way you castle. So, I'd like to get this chap out at some point. This pawn is attacked once, defended twice. I'm not too concerned about that. But there's no rush. I'm going to get my other knight out, right? Why do we bring the knights out early? Well, first of all, their normal development squares are very obvious. You know, c3 is far better than a3. f3 is far better than h3. So the only other options really are to slot them in here, which is sometimes done in some openings, yeah, for sure. Okay, so now this pawn's defended once, and it's attacked once. Right, so if my opponent captures, I get a knight for a pawn. Right, not fussed about that, that's absolutely fine. Now I think it's time to bring out the bish. Now, does bish want to come here, or does bish want to come here? My opponent's already got 2 light squared pawns there. So I'm thinking bish here makes sense, and I'm just going to check before I drop the piece. Right, drag, pause, drop. That it's not undefending anything. Well, it isn't, because this is defended, this is attacked once by a knight. It's now defended only once by my knight, because I've just blocked the queen's defense, but I only need 1 defender. Okay, so he's gone for a light squared pawn lattice there. Alright, now that does create holes on the dark squares. So that's what suddenly this bishop, the one I've highlighted in red, has become far better than this bishop, because he has more scope on the board. He is now my number 1 attacking piece. So I'm just quietly going to develop that bishop now, and then I'm going to develop my queen, because there's no immediate threat, right? It's a very, very, I mean, I could have played this setup in 5 seconds instead of the nearly 5 minutes that I've taken to do it, but very, very standard, very solid. Okay, so we've got this kind of Indian defense, King's Indian thing going on over there, and I made a video on that yesterday where I played the King's Indian against like a 650 playing the London. So I'm going to put my queen on here, and the reason is because I might want to drop my bishop in. And now I'm going to castle. Okay, so I've got my king further towards the corner. So anyone who wants to come at my king now cannot come from too far left field. Also, my rooks are now connected. So I have now what we call complete development. What I like to call completed development. Okay, so now, okay, I just almost did that instinctively. So now, this pawn is attacked twice. It's also defended twice. So I don't have to move it, but my opponent is kind of inviting me to play e5. Now, do we want to block up the centre? That's one question. Okay. You see here, what we've got here is deadlock pawns. Now, one approach is to swap off pawns, right? Even like, I'm not going to take again with a knight, I'll just lose my knight, right? If we swapped off pawns, then what we've got is what I call an open centre. We've got open e-file. We'll have no pawns on the e-file, right? And that makes a more open game. However, I played a game against OT Milker, I think, a few weeks ago, and what happened in that game was he ended up with his pieces. We had a locked centre, right? And he ended up with his pieces on the wrong side of the centre. His pieces were all kind of over here, and then I was able to come in to this side and attack. Now here he does have a bishop and a knight, but I'm going to go for the locked up centre, right? Now, one thing you have to know about this is it makes life worse for bishops, makes life harder for bishops, but knights deal with this much better. Okay, so basically no bishops, and we've still got 4 bishops on the board, right? None of these bishops can get through this lump in the middle. Right, now he's looking at my dark squared bishop, and what have we said about that bishop? It's a good bishop. We like that bishop, okay? Now, he's also looking at this pawn, which is defended twice. So I want to move the bishop, because I don't want to trade off his knight for my bishop, I don't think. I'd like to keep that fella, right? Yeah, you know, if I lose the bishop, I've still got a light squared bishop. But my plan now, you should have a plan in the middle game, even if it's crap. Okay, a crap plan is better than no plan at all. So my plan is going to be push my pawns up the board, destroy the protection of the king, and checkmate my opponent. Right, that's as far as I've got right now. So with that in mind, do I want to allow my dark square bishop to be taken? One issue is that, yeah, we've got these weakened dark squares around there. Also, the knight moving from there does allow the queen in. But the queen currently can't come to any of these squares. My instinct is I want to save the bishop. I can move the bishop here and attack the queen. Could that prompt a pawn push? If it does, do we take? Take. Anything that removes material on this side of the board, I would say is kind of a good thing. So I've got a couple of thoughts. One is to move my bishop there. One is to move my bishop there, and one is to push h3 and see what the knight's intentions are. I can't see why the knight would move to that square if he didn't want actually to take the bishop, because he's just moved to an unprotected square. Oh, well, in fact, I just attacked him, didn't I? So I kind of prompted that. So which is best? Bishop here is pretty robust and safe. Bishop here attacks the queen, may prompt a pawn push, may swap some stuff around. Kicking the knight will probably lose the bishop. I'm going to play this move. because I'm looking at the pluses of each of my candidate moves, and I'm looking at the minuses. And the plus here is it could just win a tempo and prompt the queen to move. And if we have pawn there, say takes, 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 I don't know, even takes with a queen, we are removing material from this side of the board, which is what I want. I still have the option of h3 to kick the knight, and the knight actually has nowhere to go. Particularly there, he can't go there because bishop takes, and if bishop recaptures, queen captures. And he can't go there because of the pawn. So he really doesn't have anywhere to go. Okay, so that I think was a mistake, because I've just figured out, right, and this isn't brilliance, this is, the information is there on the board. I've just figured out that if I push h3 now, I think the knight is trapped. Okay. My opponent did not figure that out. However, maybe he did, but his queen was under attack. Right? So what went wrong here? One thing is, he moved his knight forwards into enemy territory. Right? His options were here, which is protected by a pawn, and here, which is kind of nasty, but and also here. So he had three reasonable squares to go to. Now here, that traps the knight because I have two attackers on this square. So he's walked into a trap that I didn't know was there. Okay, so if I take and bishop takes, I've got queen takes. No brainer, that's a free piece. And it fulfills my goals of removing material around the king, right? Suddenly now this king's looking a bit stupid because he had this great bishop that was guarding the entrances, right? And he had a knight. And I had this choice here to push the pawn or not, right? I chose to push the pawn. So if you go back a few moves now, this was critical, right? I had a choice to open up the game by capturing or close the game by pushing and attack this knight. And this seems to be working out quite well, actually, I think, because look at my bishops, right? My bishops are on good diagonals looking down towards the king, right? Black's bishops, that one's looking there and that one's looking there, right? That is the scope of those two bishops, right? And one backward square. So these bishops are really weak. My bishops are doing a good job because they're looking down at the area of the board where the opponent's king is. So we have this. So I've just won a piece. Now he wants to have a look at my light squared bishop. Okay, now, of the two bishops, I've just traded off my best bishop. Okay, this bishop is not so good. This bishop is not so hot. So I would be quite happy if he wants to take this, because what I'd do then is I'd recapture with my rook, and then look, he's helped me to lift my rook. Now my rook can come across here, but the knight's kind of in the way of that. However, if I play knight to here, I'm threatening checkmate in one, aren't I? If I do that, the only way that my opponent can stop mate, I think, let's say the knight's here, is to push this pawn either one or two squares so that the queen is protecting that. So let's say I do this and he pushes, say, one square. I think he's safe, actually. I don't think it's an unstoppable mate. If this square was blocked off, if he couldn't push the pawn, there'd be no way for him to stop checkmate. But he has to push this pawn. Now, does that make us happy? Is that better for white or for black? If I play my bishop there and attack the queen, right? And let's say the queen takes the bishop, then I play the knight in, then he can't push the pawn, because the queen's in the wrong part of the board. The queen's here, right? So that's a thought. In fact, the queen can't take because the queen's under attack herself. So, now it's the next question. Do I want to put my bishop there, attack queenie? But then he's just going to push c6, yeah? And kick the bishop away. So, bishop here, attacks the queen, he pushes a pawn. Bishop there, push pawn. Nothing's gained by that, I don't think. This is more forcing, because it does threaten mate, so then he's going to have to move his pawn. Then I can capture his pawn if I want. But I don't think I've got enough firepower quite yet against that part of the board. Another idea is to sack this bishop for that pawn. Let's say that pawn takes, he's got a rook on an open file now. No, it's just not doing it quite yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to push this pawn. I'm going to use my pawns, I'm going to use Harry, to try and disrupt this guy. This guy, after he stepped ahead of the line, became a target. Or a hook, you might sometimes hear. And I'm not concerned about this. I think his knight is better than my bishop, so fine. Have it. Take it, it's yours. Right? And then that invites my rook up and then rook across after I bring my knight in. Now, if the queen actually ever vacates this 7th rank, this becomes an unstoppable mate. He needs to be able to defend that pawn twice. That's the fact of the matter, to stop mate. Now, f6 here would not be a bad idea. Huh. I spy with my little eye something beginning with free stuff. Surely that's a blunderlalaha, right? Nah. I can't see any major threat here. Queen comes in, that's fine. Yeah, okay, looking at that's defended. Looking at that's defended. I can, if I put my knight there, we've got queen there, but then knight blocks. And they no way that queen is coming back to the defense of the king. So now, guys, we have another big decision. What did I just say? If the queen vacates the 7th rank, after this, there's no way to stop mate. So, now you have multiple possible futures. I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey. So, knight here, right, would prompt the queen to come back down there with check, thinking, ha, I have you, but the king's got an escape hole anyway, which I can block, right? Or, knight g5 now. And like we've said, it's unstoppable, right? What can he do? All he can do now is shift the rook, right? Then queen takes that with check, king goes here, queen takes that with check, game over. So I can actually, this knight is inconsequential. This knight is actually doing me a favour of preventing check. So I think if I bring my knight in now, yeah, she can have that. She can have that knight. I don't give a stuff because I've got mate. So let's do it, yeah? Should we do it? Let's do it. Come on! This is move 16 of the game. All I've done is thinking. Yeah? You read the board. So I think I've won this. I think I have. I don't know what fella me lad here can do about it. I really don't. Rook moves away. Queen takes that, check. King can't go there, has to go here. Then the queen comes across and takes that pawn, also defended by the knight. And that's checkmate. So he's buggered. He's done for. Because he moved his queen away. which were a blunder, innit? Okay, so now, as we said, he's moved his rook. That's all he can do. So queen takes that, check. There's only one legal move. And now checkmate, right? Move 18, checkmate. Okay, so let's go through one more time from the top with big smiles. Tits and teeth, darling. Right, so, logic. e4. Why e4? Well, it controls the centre. Why is the centre so good? Well, the central squares are important because from the central squares, pieces have more influence on the game. Okay? If you have a knight here, for example, it can look at 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. Right? If you have a knight here, it can look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares. I go on about this a lot. Right? A bishop in the middle can control in 4 directions. Okay? A bishop on the side of the board can only really control 2 directions. Bishop in a corner, nobody puts bishops in the corner. Right? You don't want to put bishops in the corner. They only control 1 direction. Actually, we put bishops in corners a lot, don't we? With the fianchetto move. But that makes more sense when your opponent's king is on the other end of the diagonal, right? Okay, so e4 controls 2 good squares in the centre, right? Particularly d5. Now, the other thing it does is it opens up a hole for this bishop to come out and for this queen to come out, right? Someone said in the comments that a grandmaster once said, play e4 or d4 and see what happens. That's how you do openings, and that makes sense. Now, this is this Owen Defence thing, and you see this quite a lot from beginners, I think, you know, who play quiet openings that don't stake a claim on the 5th rank early on. And I think the idea is that I want to get through the opening phase of the game into the middle game without being gambited or attacked or surprised. So they play very close to their chest. And what you should do here is grab the centre, right? General rule, if your opponent allows you to play d4 and e4, or even d5 and e5 if you've got the black pieces, you should get it, right? And the reason is because it controls all 4 of these very, very powerful squares, very important squares. So, now we have the e7. And with this move, my opponent is avoiding tension in the board. He's controlling these 2 squares that I'm also controlling. Right? But that's about it. Yes, it allows the queen out and the bishop out. That's about it. So now out come the knights. All 4 knights come out. Okay? His knights are looking into my territory. He's looking at 4 squares now in my territory, right? But I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares in his territory, right? So I have the space advantage at this point in time. So, for example, he can't move a pawn there because I'm guarding that, right? But also, you know, I've got all of these squares. I've got 2 pieces on that square, for example, that he's not. He's only got the 1. So that's how it goes. Okay, so now the knights are out. This is good opening principle, right? Now bishops. But instead of developing, yeah, now here, because he's moved the e-pawn, right? The e-pawn releases the king's bishop. Okay, just like on my side of the board, I played e4, and then my king's bishop could come out from there to there. What he's done now is he's moved the e-pawn, which frees up a dark square. Okay, and he's now also moved the g-pawn, which also frees up a dark square. So yes, he's getting ready to fianchetto that bishop and castle kingside, right? However, he hasn't developed his light square. So, you know, he's made 3 pawn moves essentially to release 2 bishops, right? I've only moved 2 pawns at this point in time, so I'm slightly ahead. And it's interesting that he played this move on move 1, but hasn't followed up with the fianchetto yet. Okay, so I bring up my bishop. Fianchetto's the king's bishop. Yes, okay, I get it. But it does feel like black is a move behind, right? And we can tell that by counting how many pieces he's got in the board, right? He's got 1, 2, 3. That is a development tally of 3, right? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, plus it's my go, right? So I'm actually 2 steps ahead, right? So now I play queen to d2. So now I've got 5 pieces developed. He's only got 3 pieces developed. So can you see we're on move 7 now, right? And I'm already measurably ahead of my opponent because of this move, I guess. This move 1, this weird Owen Defence thing, right? He's pushed a pawn. He's used his very first move to push a pawn, and then he's done nothing with it. It hasn't helped him in development. You should only make pawn moves at the start of the game. This is the general rule, right? Make pawn moves at the start of the game if they aid development. Right? If they don't, try and avoid them. Okay, now he castles. Good. Now I castle. Note that I have castled on the opposite side to my opponent, right? Most games, you castle the same side, and most commonly, you castle kingside. And there's a few reasons for that, right? One is, because I've castled queenside here, right? Long castle. My king is not defending the a-pawn. That's one issue that you have with queenside castling. And quite often you'll see the king have to move to b1 in order to defend this pawn. Here, of course, I have a knight there, but let's pretend I didn't. Then that pawn would simply be hanging, right? So that's one issue with it. One advantage of it is it puts the rook straight in the central square on d1 or d8, right? Now, if you castle kingside, king moves to here, rook moves to the f file, and that's different. It's not in the center. Because we've got advanced pawns in the center, it's good to have a rook behind those, because this is where the action very often happens. You might have pawn breaks, you might have exchanges, you might have stuff opening up. The board will very often open up on these central D and E files, right? And then it makes sense to have your big guns on there. However, you may choose to have your big guns behind your pawns if you're going to attack with your pawns. So this is where we come into the idea of having a plan, even if it's crap, right? I have a plan. I'm going to attack my opponent and checkmate. Do you remember I said that plan and what happened, right? Move 18, checkmate. Okay, so here I've completed development. And I've completed development in the fastest possible time, 8 moves. This is move 8 and I've completed development, right? It is pawn, pawn, knight, knight, bishop, bishop, queen off the back rank, castles. Right, that's 8. 8 moves. You can only move 2 pawns. And one of them needs to have started on a light square, and one of them needs to have started on a dark square, okay? Now, it doesn't matter. You could do what my opponent's done. You could play these 2 pawns, right? And then fianchetto both bishops. That's exactly the same. However, the difference is I've got this huge control over the center, much more than my opponent. He's taken this hyper-modern approach of these fianchettoed bishops, although he hasn't quite got round to fianchettoing the queen's bishop yet. And then he wants to attack for the strike out for the center later, which is not classical. Okay, now we have d5. And this really feels like a shake-up of the game, right? It's kind of a snow globe moment in the game. And I have to make a decision strategically. Do we want to close the position, or do we want to open it up? Right? I took the decision that closing the position with an attack on the knight was a good thing. And the reason is, one of the reasons is, because I like my bishops, right? I've got bishop, bishop, queen, potentially knight, and 2 rooks, all of which can join the party on the king side. Yeah? So to have a central barrier in the middle of the board, I think here serves me from a positional perspective. Yeah, this bishop cannot do anything to defend the king. It also is going to have a very hard time trying to attack my king. It's just, this bishop is an awful, awful piece. This knight doesn't have much prospects. But what I'm doing here is I'm attacking the important pieces. These are the important pieces. This knight, this bishop. Let's see what happens. Knight comes in. And now we have a conversation about how important is that bishop. And I decide he's quite important. I quite like to keep him. Right? So I attack the queen. Now black has some choices to make. He could block with the pawn, but that's going to open stuff up around the king. Okay? Black's going to be nervous about that. He doesn't want that. So he moves the queen out of the way. Now I kick the knight, realizing that the knight has actually walked into a trappable position. Right? Now I didn't know that. When he played the move, I didn't know that. When he played the move, like you, I'm thinking, oh, you're attacking my bishop. Oh, you're attacking my pawn. You know? That's my first thought, like anyone else. And it wasn't until after we played this that I realised actually the knight could be trapped. My opponent did not figure that out, right? Although the information is there, and all you have to do is say, okay, look, I've got a piece in my territory. It's in my side of the board. Where can he go? That piece? No, no, no. No, 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 because it's actually attacked twice, not... Yeah, it's attacked twice there, and defended once. No brainer. So what he should have done is realise that, you know, he wasn't guaranteed to capture my bishop if he comes in there, but he could be captured. So, you know, a high-level chess player would not have made that move, because he would know that I can get the bishop to safety, but that he cannot get his knight to safety. Aha. Okay. And the knight falls. And now look what's happened, right? In the space of just a few moves, right? Because of this pawn move, so he's gone from this situation. Now, you remember I said in the game, he's got this nice solid structure because he's got his knight there. Now, another key thing. You want to keep your knight. Your king's defensive knight. So here's mine, right? That's my king's kind of head of security, right? Why? He's defending this pawn, you know? He's blocking the route to the king. He's the biggest, baddest bodyguard. The other bodyguards are these three guys, right? These are the grunts. And he's head of security, okay? Now, moving here, he's moved his knight away, right? What should he have done? I mean, he could have moved here. Maybe ideas of move the bishop. You can't go there now. But it's tricky. You know, it's a tricky position. I think probably moving it back here would maybe have proven to be better. But we'll run the analysis in a minute and see what the machine thinks. Okay, so now attack on the queen. Queen moves. Kick the knight. Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, there was a piece there, gone. Piece there, gone. Right? Look. Pawn chains. Blocking the middle of the board. Right? And where are his pieces? Wrong side, wrong side, wrong side, wrong side, wrong side. Everyone's on the wrong side of the pawn chain. So now, he has a prod. And I ignore it. Because he can't take this, because it's guarded by a knight. Well, at least I figured that out. So now I decide that because I don't have a sufficient attack with this, because this knight move would have prompted this, or this, right? Probably that. Yeah? And my attack splutters out. There's no attack left. So it was premature to do that. And you remember I said if the queen ever vacates this 7th rank, the unstoppable mate is on. Knight takes, queen deserts her post, right? My opponent thought for 3.4 seconds about that move, and he had 51 seconds left on the clock, and it's losing. It's losing on the spot. Because I can ignore the knight, because I have a far greater evil planned. There's nothing that black can do to stop mate. And there we go, checkmate. So, the Owen Defence. I don't know. Let's check it out. Let's check out in the opening explorer when people have played this against me. So e4, b6. When people have played that in my games, e4, 4,700 of them, and b6. b6 is about the 8th most popular opening. And I've seen it 95 times when I've had the white pieces, right? Out of those, I've won 51%. I'm going to filter it to rapid, okay? Haha. In my rapid games, I've never faced b6, apparently. Well, didn't we just play one? Interesting. Okay. But in all games, with that, and then generally, I will play d4, right? d4 65 times, and some others. f3. What's f3? Don't know. Doesn't even have a name. It's probably rubbish. Okay. So d4, by far the majority of the time. And then normally they'll play bishop e7, right? 56 times, and sometimes some e6s, as we just saw, right? We just saw e6. Now, how about at the master level? Let's look at master games on chess.com, right? How often is b6 played? Where is it? I can't even see it on the list. Can I search for it? b6. Surely it's been played. Yeah, of course it has, right? Just wasn't in that top list. Okay. And now, look, here again, the masters play d4. Right? Now, what? Where is b6? Oh, there it is, look. b6. It's been played 2,820 times. 48% win rate for white against 31 for black. Now, that's pretty poor. It has fewer draws at the master level than most other openings. But it is definitely one of the better responses from white's perspective. This is good for white. 48% win rate is there's no more popular response by black, right? That is better for white. So this is one of the best openings for white, basically. Someone's played knight h6 19 times. 74% win rate for white there. Interesting stuff. Yeah? And all this information is here. You know, it's all there available to you. So, you know, when you have a game, we'll see what the grandmasters have played in the past. Right. Let's just go back and look at the game report, because I would be interested to know what the computer thinks about these few critical moves. Right? It's only an 18-move game. 94 accuracy. That's nice. And my opponent's only got one blunder. Okay. So, book, yeah. Book. Good. But, like we see, you know, the grandmasters, if you're going to do this, fianchetto the damn bishop, right? You did that for a reason. You've got to follow through. He brings his knight out, which computer says is okay. But +1 already for white, right? 3 moves in, I'm already effectively a pawn up. Okay, it says a3 is slightly better, preventing this knight from coming in to here, and preventing this bishop from coming into there. Okay, that's an interesting thought. But we were following principles, right? Now, a3 at this point would be a prophylactic move, right, to guard this square. But it does slow down development. So I'm playing with principles. So he brings his knight out again. Okay. So apparently bringing the bishop out with the pin on the knight would have been slightly better. And that's why a3 The computer says. If you're a computer playing in a computerly way against computers, then that would have been better. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So I could here have kicked the knight straight away, right? But I decided not to. My opponent's playing feels like quite slow, quite tame. So I'm focusing on development. It doesn't like that at all. It's got white nearly 2.5 points up now. It says d6 is best. Oh, and because of this, because I can play e5. I could still play e5, hit the knight, and gain tempo that way. But we're following principles, so yeah, it's an inaccuracy because e5 was better. And then bishop to here is excellent. Good. I'm 1.5 up now. Queen d2 is excellent, but again e5, it just really wants me to dislodge that knight, right? But don't worry, computer. Keep your little silicon socks on. Castling is an inaccuracy now from black. It says, fianchetto the damn bishop. I've heard that somewhere before, right? It wants the bishop to be involved in the game. I don't think this bishop was ever involved in the game, right? And this is why we say development matters. Now it's saying it wanted me to pin the knight here, and then I guess I could have attacked it with a pawn and maybe won the knight, right? Fair enough. I get that. That's a mistake. No. Oh, it's bad. What should he have played? Okay, played the knight into here. Okay, now he did actually... Did he make that move later? Yeah, he did, and then captured this pawn and lost his knight. e5 is best, and now I play e5, and now the computer's very happy because I finally played the move that it wanted me to play. Yeah, I didn't see this. There was the opportunity to pin the knight first on the queen and then come in for the attack, which would have been fine. Knight g4 is best. Okay, hold the front page. Knight g4 is best. Bishop g5 is an inaccuracy. It said I should put the bishop here, but I wanted to gain the tempo, attack the queen. So it's saying that what should follow here is f6. E takes f6. Bishop takes f6. Bishop takes f6, and knight takes f6. Right? So it's saying that a lot of stuff would be swapped, and then that would be that. But here my opponent decided not to do that. Mistake. Yes. Right? +4 now for white. Okay, now I gave him the opportunity to make that mistake. h3 is best, kick the knight. Obviously, because the knight is now trapped. Yeah? So I'm guessing the reason why after this pawn move would have been better is because it kind of forces the issue, right? So pawn goes there, I have to do something. So I take, you know, we have some taking, and then finally the knight captures, and the knight has saved itself. In this instance, the reason why that's a mistake is because the knight can't save itself. Knight moves back here. Okay, it says it should have grabbed a pawn on the way out. Right, desperado capture, yeah? But here, obviously, best moves. Knight to here. h4 is best. Look at that. This is best. I'm almost like burning a card here, right? But I'm just, you know, coming up. I want to take out this pawn. If I can take out this pawn, I've got queen and a rook lined up against my opponent. Very, very simple. Knight takes a2 is good, but it's got white at +9. Knight captures obviously is best, just one material, and that is the blunder. Okay, now it says he should have pushed f5. f5 at least gives the king an escape route. Yeah, blunder. That was the only blunder of the game. Knight coming in, we've got mate in 3. It's unstoppable, right? m3 means mate in 3. Okay, really, really interesting stuff. I've learned some stuff from that game. Very interesting. Okay, so there you go. That's your video for today. Thanks for watching. Hope it's been useful for you if you're around that 1000 mark, or if you find yourself facing these hypermodern kind of openings where black doesn't try and compete for the centre, then hope this will give you some middle game ideas and how to attack in that. But in the end, very easy win. And it wasn't because my opponent played awful chess, as we've seen, played fairly solidly in the opening. But, it all started to go wrong when he got his knight trapped on the wrong side of the board behind enemy lines. He just simply didn't calculate it. And if you're going to play a 45 plus 45 game, you don't want to lose with 52 minutes still on the clock, right? The reason I won that game is not because I'm any smarter than my opponent, right, or more experienced than my opponent. The reason I won that game is because I thought through what's going to happen if I do this, if I do that, right? Yes, I probably have quite a bit more experience, and I had a plan, right? But that's not my fault, right? The fact that I had a plan is not a sneaky cheating advantage, right? My opponent should have had a plan. Don't think he did. But I think blocking up the centre, that's just strategic thinking. And we're looking at the same board. We're looking at the same information for the entire game. All the information is there. I don't have knowledge. I don't have access to any more data than he has access to. It's all there on the board, right? But finally, only one blunder in the whole game, which is this, right? But I figured this out. I figured out, if the knight comes in there, that's mate in 2, right? As long as the queen can't, as long as if this pawn can move and the queen can defend that pawn, no problem for black, right? But like I said, right, I figured this out from the information available. If the queen vacates this rank, then it means black can't play f6 or f5, and the queen can't defend that, and it is an unstoppable mate after the knight flies in. Not rocket science, yeah? Just thinking about it. And that's the difference, if I play somebody 1800 rated, right, they will just do more thinking cycles than I will. I'll play a move and think that looks good enough, let's play that, let's push that, You're just pushing wood. But as you get better, you will, as you get more experience, you will just think slightly deeper. And I think a big part of that is simply effort. You've got to make the effort to think, rather than just say, it's a move. All right, simple as that. Anyway, thanks for sitting through this with me. Very interesting game. I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe to Chess Bootcamp if you haven't subscribed. It's all there. It's all about helping beginners to get to 1,000 and beyond in your rating. That's what I love to do. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you soon.